26-year-old Madison Harper always lived in the shadow of her golden child brother, Tyler. When their wealthy grandmother passes away, Madison expects nothing from the will reading. After all, she was the disappointing granddaughter who chose art over business. But when Tyler walks away with millions and Madison gets only a mysterious envelope from a stranger, she discovers that sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money. What's inside that envelope will expose family secrets, reveal her grandmother's true final wish, and transform Madison from the forgotten granddaughter into the rightful heir of something far more precious than Tyler could ever imagine. My name is Madison Harper, and I've spent 26 years being the family disappointment. Standing outside Whitman and Associates law firm in downtown Chicago, watching the October rain streak down the windows of my beat-up Honda, I wondered why I even bothered showing up to Grandma Rose's will reading. After all, everyone knew Tyler was her favorite. The marble lobby of the law firm screamed old money, the kind my family had, and the kind I'd never quite measured up to. My worn jeans and paint-stained cardigan felt like a neon sign announcing my failure as I walked past lawyers in $1,000 suits. The receptionist, a woman with perfectly styled silver hair, looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. "You must be Madison," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of politeness that wasn't polite at all. "Your family is already waiting in conference room A." My heart sank. Of course they'd started without me. Story of my life. I pushed open the heavy oak doors to find exactly what I expected. Tyler sitting at the head of the polished table like he already owned the place, wearing his designer suit and that confident smile that had charmed everyone since we were kids. Mom sat to his right, her Chanel jacket perfectly pressed, her diamonds catching the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Dad was checking his Rolex again, because heaven forbid a family meeting run longer than scheduled. "Madison," Mom said, her voice carrying that familiar note of resigned disappointment. "We were beginning to think you wouldn't come." "Traffic," I mumbled, sliding into the empty chair at the far end of the table. The distance felt intentional, like even in death, Grandma Rose was putting me in my place. Tyler flashed me that $1,000,000 smile. "Hey, sis. Sorry about your, He gestured vaguely at my appearance. "Rough morning." Before I could respond, the door opened, and Mr. Whitman entered. He was exactly what you'd expect from a lawyer who handled wealthy families. Silver-haired, expensive suit, briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But there was something else. A woman I'd never seen before walked in behind him. She was maybe 40, with kind eyes and an envelope clutched in her manicured hands. She looked nervous, like she wasn't sure she belonged there either. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Whitman said, settling into his chair and opening a leather portfolio. "Before we begin with Mrs. Harper's will, I need to introduce someone who asked to be present today. This is Rebecca Chen, and she has something that Mrs. Harper specifically requested be delivered during this reading." My family exchanged confused glances. Tyler's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "I don't understand," Mom said, her voice tight. "Mother didn't mention anyone named Rebecca Chen." Rebecca stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly. "Mrs. Harper saved my life," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 10 years ago, when I was going through my divorce, losing my house, about to lose my daughter to my ex-husband's custody battle, she hired me at her gallery. She didn't know me from anyone, but she gave me a chance when no one else would." The room fell silent. I felt a strange stirring in my chest, pride maybe. Grandma Rose had owned a small art gallery downtown, the only part of the family business that had never interested Tyler or my parents. "She left me this," Rebecca continued, holding up the envelope, "with very specific instructions about when and how to deliver it." Mr. Whitman cleared his throat. "Shall we proceed with the will reading first?" What happened next was exactly what I'd expected, but it still hurt like a physical blow. Tyler inherited the family estate in Lake Forest. All 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, and 10 acres of lakefront property worth $8 million. He got the investment portfolio, another $4 million. The family business, Harper and Associates consulting firm, went to him too, along with all its assets. "To my grandson Tyler," Mr. Whitman read in his measured voice, "who has shown such promise in following the family tradition of business excellence, I leave the bulk of my estate, confident that he will honor the Harper name and continue our legacy of success." Tyler's smile grew wider with each bequest. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief, but I could tell she was crying from pride, not grief. Dad nodded approvingly, already probably calculating tax implications. Then came my part. To my granddaughter Madison, Mr. Whitman continued, and I held my breath, who has chosen a different path than the family business. I leave my personal art collection, housed at the Rose Harper Gallery, along with the gallery building itself. I blinked. The gallery? It was a tiny space in the arts district, barely profitable. The art collection was nice. Grandma had good taste. But compared to Tyler's inheritance, it was pocket change. Maybe worth a few $100,000 if I was lucky. Additionally, Mr. Whitman continued, Madison will receive a trust fund of $50,000 for the maintenance and operation of the gallery. Tyler actually chuckled. Well, sis, looks like you got the consolation prize. Maybe you can turn it into a coffee shop or something more practical. The sting of his words hit harder than I expected. Even in death, Grandma Rose was sending me a message. Stick to your little art projects. Leave the real business to the men. That concludes the will, Mr. Whitman said, but then he looked at Rebecca. Now, Ms. Chen, you had something to deliver? Rebecca stood up, walked around the table, and stopped directly in front of me. Her hands were still shaking as she held out the envelope. Your grandmother made me promise to give this to you after the will was read, she said, her voice stronger now. She said it was the most important thing she'd ever written. I took the envelope with trembling fingers. My name was written on the front in Grandma Rose's distinctive handwriting, not the formal Madison Harper from legal documents, but my dear Maddie, the nickname she'd used when I was little. What is it? Tyler asked, and for the first time I heard uncertainty in his voice. I looked around the room at my family's expectant faces, then at Rebecca, who was watching me with something that looked like hope. Should I open it now? I asked. Yes, Rebecca said firmly. She insisted it be opened here in front of everyone. My heart was pounding as I tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter in Grandma Rose's handwriting, but also something else, a small brass key and what looked like a business card. I unfolded the letter and began to read silently, but Rebecca spoke up. She wanted you to read it aloud, she said. Those were her exact words. Make sure Maddie reads it aloud so they all hear what I really think. What do you think was in that letter? Have you ever felt like the family disappointment, only to discover there was more to the story? Drop a comment below and share your experience. I'd love to hear from you. If you're enjoying this story of family secrets and unexpected inheritances, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to see Tyler's reaction to what I'm about to read. Because what I discovered in that letter didn't just change my inheritance. It exposed a family secret that would turn everything upside down. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the letter steady. The silence in the conference room was deafening. Even the Chicago traffic outside seemed to have stopped. Tyler was leaning forward in his chair, that confident smile finally starting to crack around the edges. Well, Mom said impatiently. What does it say, Madison? I took a deep breath and began to read in a voice that didn't sound like my own. My dearest Maddie, if you're reading this, then my final performance has begun. Yes, performance, because that's what today's will reading was. A carefully orchestrated show to make sure the right people were watching when the truth finally came out. Tyler's face went pale. What the hell does that mean? I continued reading. For years, I watched this family treat you like you were worth less than your brother, simply because you chose art over money, creativity over conformity. I watched your parents dismiss your talents, your dreams, your beautiful heart. And I let them because I was waiting for the right moment to set things straight. My voice caught. Even from beyond the grave, Grandma Rose was defending me in a way no one ever had when she was alive. The gallery I left you, Maddie, is not a consolation prize. It's the foundation of something much bigger. Behind the false wall in my office, you'll find it using the key in this envelope, is my real office. And in that office, you'll discover what I've really been building for the past 20 years. I looked up at Rebecca, who was nodding encouragingly. Keep reading, she whispered. You see, my dear granddaughter, while your parents thought I was just playing with a little hobby gallery, I was actually running one of the most successful art acquisition and investment businesses in the Midwest. The personal art collection I left you? It's worth $12 million. But that's not even the best part. Tyler shot to his feet. That's impossible. She couldn't have. Sit down, Tyler, Dad said sharply, but his voice was strained. I kept reading. The gallery building doesn't just house my art collection. It houses the headquarters of Rose Harper Acquisitions, a company I built in secret, using my maiden name so your father couldn't interfere. Rebecca Chen isn't just someone I helped. She's been my business partner and the manager of RHA for the past 7 years. Rebecca stood up straighter, and suddenly her presence in the room made perfect sense. She wasn't just some grateful employee. She was a businesswoman, and apparently a very successful one. The business card in your envelope, Maddie, will give you the contact information from my attorney, not Mr. Whitman here, who handles the family's public affairs, but Sarah Martinez, who handles my private business interests. She has all the paperwork showing that you are now the sole owner of Rose Harper Acquisitions, which has assets worth approximately $37 million. The sound that escaped Tyler's throat was somewhere between a gasp and a groan. Mom's handkerchief dropped from her trembling fingers. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Furthermore, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, the gallery property sits on land that I purchased quietly over the past 15 years. The entire Arts District block, 6 buildings, including the gallery, belongs to you now, Maddie. Conservative estimate, another $8 million in real estate value. Mr. Whitman was frantically shuffling through his papers. I don't understand. These assets weren't listed in the will I prepared. Rebecca spoke up for the first time since handing me the envelope. Because Mrs. Harper used a different attorney for her private business affairs. This will reading was only for the family assets, the ones everyone expected her to have. I looked back at the letter. I know what you're thinking, Maddie. Why the secrecy? Why not tell the family what I was really doing? Because I needed to see how they would treat you when they thought you were getting nothing of value. I needed to confirm what I already suspected, that they would continue to dismiss and undervalue you even after I was gone. Tyler slammed his hand on the table. This is fraud. She can't just hide assets from the family. Actually, Rebecca said calmly, pulling out her phone, she can. I'm conference calling Sarah Martinez right now since she'll need to speak with Madison anyway. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Rebecca? Is this about the Harper reading? Yes, Sarah. I'm here with Madison Harper and her family. They have some questions about the estate. Put me on speaker, Sarah said. When Rebecca complied, the voice filled the room with absolute authority. To whom am I speaking? This is Tyler Harper, my brother said, trying to reclaim some control. I'm the primary beneficiary of my grandmother's estate, and there seems to be some confusion about undisclosed assets. Sarah's laugh was cold. Mr. Harper, there's no confusion. Your grandmother was a brilliant businesswoman who chose to keep her private ventures separate from her family obligations. Everything she did was completely legal. She paid taxes on all earnings, filed all appropriate paperwork, and made her own decisions about her private wealth. But we're her family, Mom interjected, her voice shrill. Yes, and she left you generous bequests, Sarah replied matter-of-factly. Tyler received the family home and traditional investments, but Mrs. Harper was under no legal or moral obligation to inform her family about business ventures they weren't involved in. I was still holding the letter, and there was more to read. Maddie, I know this is overwhelming, but here's what I want you to understand. You don't have to do anything with this inheritance except be yourself. If you want to sell everything and travel the world, do it. If you want to expand the gallery into the empire I know it could become, do it. If you want to give it all away and live as an artist, do it. The money is yours, free and clear, because you are the only one in this family who never tried to change me, never pressured me to be anything other than who I was. Tears were streaming down my face now. Around the table, my family looked like they'd been hit by a truck. There's one more thing in the envelope, the letter continued. A photo I want you to look at. I reached into the envelope and pulled out a small photograph. It showed Grandma Rose and me in her gallery when I was maybe 15, both of us covered in paint, laughing at something I couldn't remember. On the back, in her handwriting, the day I knew you were the real artist in the family. I remember every conversation we had about art, about life, about following your dreams even when everyone else thinks you're crazy, I read aloud. You never knew it, but those conversations weren't just a grandmother indulging her granddaughter's hobby. They were a successful businesswoman recognizing a kindred spirit. Tyler was pacing now, his perfect composure completely shattered. There has to be something we can do, he said to Dad. Contest the will, claim she was mentally incompetent. Tyler, Sarah's voice cut through his rambling. "I have recordings of every meeting your grandmother and I had over the past 5 years. She was sharp as a tack until the very end. Any legal challenge you attempt will fail spectacularly and publicly. I'd advise against it." I looked around the room at my family, really looked at them for maybe the first time. Mom was crying, but not from grief. Dad was calculating, already trying to figure out how to work this situation to his advantage. Tyler looked like a child whose favorite toy had been taken away. Then I looked at Rebecca, who was watching me with genuine warmth and something that looked like excitement. "Madison," she said softly, "your grandmother was an amazing woman and an incredible mentor. I'd be honored to help you understand what you've inherited, if you'd like. Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought you knew about your life suddenly changed? What would you do if you discovered you were worth millions, but your family had treated you like you were worthless?" I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see how this story ends, because Tyler's about to make a move that will force me to show just how much I've learned from Grandma Rose about standing up for myself. But first, I had to figure out what I was going to do with $45 million and a family that suddenly saw me very differently. The silence in the conference room stretched on for what felt like hours. I was still holding Grandma Rose's letter, the photograph, and the brass key, trying to process that my life had just completely changed. Around the table, my family was going through their own versions of shock. Tyler was the first to recover, and when he did, it was with the calculating smile I remembered from childhood, the one he wore when he was about to take something that belonged to me. "Madison," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "This is obviously a lot to process. You're probably feeling overwhelmed, confused. Listen, family takes care of family, right? I think the best thing would be for me to help you manage these unexpected assets. I have experience with large financial portfolios." "No." The word came out of my mouth before I even realized I was going to say it. Tyler blinked. "Excuse me?" I said no, Tyler. I stood up and something had changed in my voice, in my posture. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged in this room of expensive suits and power plays. "I don't need your help managing anything." Mom leaned forward. "Madison, honey, be reasonable. This is a tremendous responsibility. You've never handled this kind of money before. And you've never built a $45 million business empire from scratch," I interrupted, looking directly at her. "But Grandma Rose did. And she left it to me because she trusted me to handle it." Dad cleared his throat. "Madison, I think what your mother and Tyler are trying to say is that we're here to support you. Families should stick together, especially when dealing with this kind of wealth. There are tax implications, investment strategies. Where was this family support when I was struggling to pay rent on my studio apartment?" I asked. "Where was it when I was eating ramen noodles for dinner because I spent my grocery money on art supplies? Where was it when I graduated summa cum laude with my MFA, and none of you even came to the ceremony because Tyler had a golf tournament that weekend?" The room fell silent again. Rebecca stepped forward. "Madison," she said gently, "would you like me to explain what your grandmother built? What you've actually inherited?" I nodded, grateful to have an ally in the room. Rebecca opened her tablet and began swiping through screens. Rose Harper Acquisitions specializes in discovering and developing emerging artists. We find talented people before they're famous, provide them with financial support, gallery representation, and career development. In return, we get first rights to purchase their work as they grow in value. She turned the tablet toward me. "Your grandmother's eye for talent was extraordinary. Artists we supported 5 years ago are now selling pieces for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The business model is brilliant. Invest in people's dreams early, help them succeed, and build wealth for everyone involved." Tyler scoffed. "So it's basically gambling on amateur painters." "Actually," Rebecca continued, her professional mask slipping just enough to show her irritation, "it's one of the most successful art investment firms in the country. We have clients in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, collectors who pay premium prices for our recommendations because Rose's track record was flawless." She swiped to another screen. "We currently represent 43 artists. The waiting list to get into our development program is 2 years long. And Madison," she looked directly at me, "your grandmother always said you had the same instinct she did for recognizing real talent." "This is ridiculous," Tyler said, standing up and straightening his tie. "Madison doesn't know anything about running a business. She's an artist, for God's sake. Artists don't understand finance, marketing, customer relations. Tyler, I said quietly. Shut up. He looked like I'd slapped him. In 26 years, I don't think I'd ever told him to shut up. You want to talk about business? I continued, my voice getting stronger. Let's talk about business. You've been running Dad's consulting firm for 3 years, and in that time, you've lost 2 major clients and watched profits drop by 30%. You spent more on client entertainment last year than some of our competitors' entire operating budgets. And let's not even discuss the sexual harassment complaint HR is currently investigating, the one you think Mom and Dad don't know about. Tyler's face went white. Mom gasped. Dad's expression turned thunderous. How do you can't possibly know about that? I finished. Grandma Rose did business with half the companies in Chicago, Tyler. She heard things. She knew things. And apparently she shared them with Rebecca, who shared them with me while you were all busy processing your shock. I turned to Rebecca. Thank you for the heads up about my brother's professional reputation. She nodded. Your grandmother always said knowledge was power, and power should be used responsibly. I looked back at my family, these people who had spent my entire life making me feel small, unimportant, not quite good enough. The people who were now looking at me like I was a stranger. Here's what's going to happen, I said, amazed at how calm I sounded. I'm going to take control of my inheritance. I'm going to learn everything I can about the business Grandma Rose built. And I'm going to honor her legacy by continuing to support artists who deserve a chance to succeed. Madison, Mom started. I'm not finished, I said firmly. Tyler, your inheritance stands. You got the family home, the traditional investments, everything you expected. What you didn't get was the business empire you didn't even know existed. That's not fraud, that's not unfair, that's consequences. Tyler's jaw clenched. Consequences for what? For treating me like I was worthless my entire life. For dismissing my dreams, my education, my talents. For making me feel like I had to apologize for existing in this family. I picked up my purse and turned toward the door. Rebecca, I'd like to see the gallery and the office behind the false wall. And I'd like to schedule a meeting with Sarah Martinez as soon as possible. Of course, Rebecca said, gathering her things. We can go right now if you'd like. As we reached the door, Tyler called out, Madison, wait. You can't just walk away from your family over money. I turned back to look at him. You're right, Tyler. I can't walk away from my family over money. But I can walk toward a life where I'm valued for who I am, not dismissed for who I'm not. And if you ever want to have a real conversation about family, one where you treat me like an equal instead of an inconvenience, you know where to find me. I'll be at the gallery doing exactly what Grandma Rose believed I was capable of doing. As Rebecca and I walked out of that conference room, I heard Mom crying behind us. Not the dignified tears of grief she'd shed during the will reading, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone who just realized they'd lost something precious through their own actions. The elevator doors closed on my old life, and when they opened in the lobby, I stepped out as someone completely different. Not Madison Harper, the family disappointment, but Madison Harper, CEO of a $45 million company built on the radical idea that dreams are worth investing in. Outside, the October rain had stopped, and Chicago looked different somehow, brighter, full of possibilities I'd never allowed myself to imagine. Ready to see what your grandmother really built? Rebecca asked, hailing a taxi. Ready? I said, and for the first time in my life, I meant it. 6 months later, Rose Harper Acquisitions had expanded into 2 new markets, signed 15 new artists, and increased profits by 40%. Tyler and I haven't spoken since that day in the conference room, but Mom has started coming to gallery openings. Dad still doesn't really understand what I do, but he stopped suggesting I get a real job. And me? I wake up every morning in my new apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, grateful for a grandmother who saw in me what I couldn't see in myself, and who had the courage to bet everything on the granddaughter everyone else had written off. Have you ever had someone believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself? Has your family ever underestimated you in a way that actually made you stronger? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this story of family dynamics and unexpected inheritances resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. There are so many more stories of people who found their power in the most unexpected places. Because sometimes the best inheritance isn't money, it's finally understanding your own worth.